You're nothing but a pathetic excuse for a mother. Ivy's words cut through the kitchen air like shattered glass as she stared down her mother, Caroline, who stood trembling by the sink. The older woman's face crumpled, but Ivy felt nothing, only the cold satisfaction of finally saying what she'd been thinking for months. Caroline's hand flew to her cheek as if she'd been slapped. Ivy, please, I know things have been hard since your father. Since Dad what? Since he finally got smart enough to leave you? Ivy's voice dripped with venom. Face it, Mom. You're toxic. You destroy everything you touch. The spit hit Caroline's face before either of them realized what had happened. Ivy watched her mother wipe her cheek with shaking fingers, something dark and unrecognizable flashing in Caroline's eyes. You have no idea what you just started, Caroline whispered. If this story has you hooked, smash that like button and subscribe to Formidable Revenge channel. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers worldwide. Now let's dive into how this family war really began. 3 hours earlier, Ivy had been riding high on teenage invincibility, surrounded by her crew at Madison High's lunch table. The popular kids hung on her every word as she spun tales about her crazy mother who couldn't even keep a husband. She literally cries every night, Ivy had laughed, tossing her auburn hair. Like, get over it already. My dad upgraded to someone half her age. Her friends ate it up. Savannah Chin giggled behind her manicured nails. Oh my God, Ivy, you're terrible. I'm honest, Ivy shrugged. My mom's a complete disaster. She can't cook, can't clean, can't even hold down her job at the insurance office. I told my guidance counselor she's been drinking again. That last part was a lie, but it got the reaction she wanted. Gasps, sympathetic looks, invitations to sleep over at their houses. Ivy basked in the attention, the way being the victim made her interesting, made people care. She didn't notice Tyler Morrison recording her little performance on his phone. Didn't see him uploaded to TikTok with the caption "Rich girl trashes her own mom, yikes." By the time school ended, the video had 3,000 views and climbing. Ivy strutted through the front door of their suburban Phoenix home, designer backpack slung over her shoulder, completely oblivious to the storm waiting for her. Caroline sat at the kitchen island, laptop open, Tyler's video playing on repeat. Care to explain this? Caroline's voice was deadly quiet. Ivy glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop, but she covered it with a scoff. So? It's called free speech, Mom. Maybe if you weren't such an embarrassment, I wouldn't have anything to talk about. That's when Caroline stood up slowly, her face pale but her eyes blazing. An embarrassment? I work 60 hours a week to keep this house. I pay for your clothes, your car, your phone. I held this family together while your father was cheating with his secretary. Yeah, well, maybe if you'd been a better wife. The sound of Caroline's palm connecting with Ivy's cheek echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. Ivy stared at her mother in shock, hand pressed to her burning face. Caroline had never hit her before. Ever. You want to air our dirty laundry online? Caroline's voice shook with rage. You want to humiliate me in front of the entire world? Fine. But you just declared war on the wrong woman. The slap had awakened something primal in Ivy, not remorse, but fury. How dare her mother hit her? How dare she act like the victim when she was the one who'd driven Dad away with her constant nagging and depression? Ivy stormed to her bedroom, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the family photos lining the hallway. She threw herself onto her unmade bed, surrounded by the designer clothes and expensive makeup Caroline's salary had bought, and started plotting. Her phone buzzed with notifications. The TikTok video had exploded, 50,000 views and counting. Comments poured in faster than she could read them. Your mom sounds like she needs help. This is actually really sad. Girl, you need therapy. But scattered among the criticism were the responses that fed her anger. My mom's the same way, total train wreck. You're so brave for speaking out. Toxic parents deserve to be exposed. Ivy screenshot the supportive comments, her rage crystallizing into something sharper, more dangerous. If Caroline wanted to play hardball, Ivy would show her what real warfare looked like. She opened her laptop and began typing a Facebook post that would make the TikTok video look tame. My mother just physically assaulted me for telling the truth about our family situation. I'm scared and don't know what to do. She's been unstable since my dad left, drinking heavily and taking her anger out on me. I'm only 17 and trapped in this toxic environment. The post was a masterpiece of manipulation, just enough truth mixed with calculated lies to seem believable. She tagged her extended family, family friends, even some of her mother's co-workers she'd found on social media. Within minutes, her phone exploded with messages. Aunt Rebecca from Portland, honey, are you safe? Do you need somewhere to stay? Her grandmother in Tucson, I'm calling your mother right now. Even strangers were sharing the post, adding their own commentary about child abuse and toxic parenting. Ivy felt a rush of power unlike anything she'd ever experienced. With a few keystrokes, she'd turned the entire narrative around. Now she was the victim, and Caroline was the monster. But she wasn't done yet. Caroline's phone started ringing at 7 p.m. and didn't stop until midnight. Friends, family members, even her boss at Hartwell Insurance called with concerned questions about Ivy's welfare. Each conversation was a fresh humiliation, forcing Caroline to defend herself against accusations she never saw coming. Rebecca, I did not hit her hard, Caroline explained to her sister for the third time. She's been acting out since the divorce, posting cruel videos about me online. Caroline, I've seen the video, Rebecca's voice was cold. And now this Facebook post. Maybe you need to consider that you're not handling this well. Caroline hung up and found Ivy in the living room, sprawled on the couch watching Netflix with an infuriating smirk on her face. Enjoying yourself? Caroline asked. Ivy didn't even look up from her phone. Just responding to all the people who actually care about me. Mrs. Henderson from next door wants to call CPS. I told her I'd think about it. The threat hit Caroline like a physical blow. CPS meant investigations, meant Ivy potentially being removed from the home, meant Caroline's nursing license could be reviewed, her career destroyed. Everything she'd worked for since the divorce could vanish because of her daughter's lies. You wouldn't, Caroline whispered. Ivy finally looked at her, eyes glittering with malice. Try me. One more slap, one more angry outburst, and I'll have social services here so fast your head will spin. Everyone already believes you're unstable, Mom. It wouldn't be hard to convince them you're dangerous too. Caroline felt something cold settle in her chest. This wasn't her daughter anymore, this was a stranger wearing Ivy's face, a calculating predator who'd learned to weaponize her own victimhood. What do you want? Caroline asked quietly. I want you to leave me alone, Ivy said, turning back to her show. No more rules, no more chores, no more lectures about responsibility. I'm 17, practically an adult. Start treating me like one. Caroline stared at her daughter's profile, memorizing the sharp line of her jaw, the way she held her phone like a weapon. And if I don't? Ivy's smile was pure poison. Then you'll find out just how creative I can get with social media. For 2 weeks, Caroline played by Ivy's rules. She bit her tongue when Ivy stumbled home at 3 a.m. reeking of alcohol and marijuana. She said nothing when Ivy's grades plummeted or when the school called about missed classes. She even cleaned up the mess Ivy left in the kitchen after hosting an impromptu party that resulted in red wine stains on Caroline's grandmother's white carpet. But Caroline wasn't passive, she was planning. Every interaction with Ivy was now recorded on the hidden app Caroline had installed on her phone. Every lie, every manipulation, every cruel comment was captured and saved to a secure cloud folder. Caroline also began documenting everything, photographing the damage to the house, keeping receipts for every expense, maintaining detailed logs of Ivy's behavior. She hired a private investigator named Marcus Webb, a gruff ex-cop who specialized in family cases. I need to know everything about my daughter's activities, Caroline told him during their clandestine meeting at a coffee shop across town. Who she's with, where she goes, what she's really doing. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes parents don't like what they find. My daughter tried to destroy my reputation and threatened to have me arrested on false charges, Caroline said evenly. I'm past caring about hurt feelings. Within a week, Marcus delivered a thick folder that made Caroline's blood run cold. Photos of Ivy with known drug dealers at Phoenix parties. Screenshots of her Venmo transactions showing payments for substances she was too young to purchase legally. Evidence of her using fake IDs at downtown clubs. Most damning of all, audio recordings Marcus had captured of Ivy bragging to friends about having her mom completely under control. The girl's got a pattern, Marcus explained. She targets authority figures, teachers, coaches, even that guidance counselor she mentioned in her TikTok. Any adult who tries to discipline her gets the same treatment you did. False accusations, social media campaigns, manipulation. Caroline studied a photo of Ivy laughing with a group of college-aged men outside a notorious nightclub. Her daughter looked beautiful and confident, but there was something hollow in her eyes, something that made Caroline's heart ache even through her anger. She's not just rebelling, Caroline realized. She's learned to survive by destroying anyone who gets too close. But as Caroline planned her counterattack, she didn't notice that Ivy had found the hidden recording app on her phone. Didn't realize that her daughter had been watching her every move, documenting Caroline's own surveillance activities. The predator had become the prey, and neither of them knew it yet. The trap was set for a Tuesday evening in March. Caroline had spent hours preparing, reviewing her evidence, practicing her words. She'd invited Ivy's school guidance counselor, Mrs. Patricia Evans, for a home visit under the pretense of discussing Ivy's ongoing emotional struggles. Caroline had also secretly invited Aunt Rebecca, Grandmother Dorothy, and even Caroline's boss, Janet Hartwell, telling each of them that she wanted to address Ivy's concerning social media posts in a family meeting. What Caroline didn't know was that Ivy had intercepted several of these communications. Her daughter had learned Caroline's email password months ago and had been monitoring her correspondence like a hawk. When Caroline's guests began arriving at 6 p.m., they found Ivy waiting in the living room, tear-streaked and trembling, surrounded by printed screenshots of Caroline's text messages and emails. "Thank God you're all here," Ivy said, her voice breaking perfectly. "I didn't know who else to turn to. My mom has completely lost it." She held up the evidence, Caroline's communications with the private investigator, photos of surveillance equipment, and most damaging of all, audio recordings where Caroline could be heard saying things like "I need to destroy her credibility before she destroys mine and whatever it takes to protect myself." Mrs. Evans looked horrified. "Caroline, you hired someone to spy on your own daughter?" "You don't understand," Caroline started, but Ivy cut her off with a fresh sob. "She's been stalking me, paying someone to follow me, recording our private conversations. I think she's having a complete breakdown. I'm honestly scared of what she might do next." Aunt Rebecca moved to comfort Ivy, shooting Caroline a look of pure disgust. "Caroline, this is beyond inappropriate. This is genuinely disturbing behavior." Caroline watched her carefully constructed plan collapse in real time. Every piece of evidence she'd gathered now looked like the obsessive behavior of an unstable mother persecuting her innocent daughter. Ivy had turned Caroline's own weapons against her with surgical precision. "She's lying," Caroline said desperately. "The recording will show." "The recordings show a mother violating her daughter's privacy and plotting against her," Grandmother Dorothy said coldly. "Caroline, I think you need professional help." As her family and friends rallied around Ivy, Caroline realized with crystal clarity that she'd been outmaneuvered by a master manipulator. But more than that, she finally understood what she was really fighting, not a rebellious teenager, but a sociopathic predator who saw human emotions as weaknesses to exploit. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The intervention lasted 3 hours and destroyed what remained of Caroline's social life. By the time her guests left, Caroline had been labeled an unfit mother by her own family and given an ultimatum: seek intensive therapy or lose custody of Ivy entirely. Aunt Rebecca had already contacted a family lawyer. Mrs. Evans was filing a report with Child Protective Services. Even Caroline's boss suggested she take extended leave to address her personal issues. Ivy basked in the attention, accepting hugs and promises of support while shooting triumphant glances at Caroline. "I'm just glad everyone finally sees the truth," she said, dabbing her eyes with tissues that were suspiciously dry. That night, Caroline sat alone in her kitchen, staring at the remains of her carefully planned defense. Every document in Marcus Webb's folder now looked like evidence of her own instability. The recordings that were supposed to expose Ivy's manipulation instead revealed Caroline's growing desperation and paranoia. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Caroline, we love you, but Ivy needs protection from whatever's happening to you mentally. Please get help." Caroline almost laughed at the bitter irony. Ivy had weaponized Caroline's own evidence gathering, turning her legitimate concerns into proof of mental illness. It was brilliant, ruthless, and completely effective. But as Caroline prepared to surrender, to accept defeat and let Ivy continue her path of destruction, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Webb's number. "You need to see something," Marcus said without preamble. "Meet me at the usual place in 20 minutes. And Caroline? Bring a strong stomach." Caroline found Marcus waiting in his car in the empty parking lot behind the Starbucks on Northern Avenue. He handed her a manila envelope without speaking. Inside were photographs that made Caroline's hands shake. Images of Ivy with a man in his 30s, clearly intimate, taken outside a motel in Tempe. Transaction records showing Ivy receiving payments through Cash App from multiple older men. Screenshots of online profiles where Ivy had listed herself as 19 and available for private companionship. "Your daughter's been running an escort service," Marcus said quietly. "High-end stuff, targeting wealthy businessmen who think she's college-aged. The money trail goes back 6 months." Caroline stared at a photo of Ivy counting cash in the backseat of a BMW. "My God. She's a predator," Marcus finished. "And she's been using the victim narrative to cover her tracks. Every adult who's tried to intervene in her life has been systematically destroyed to protect her operation." Caroline felt something cold and terrible crystallize in her chest. The guidance counselor she accused of harassment. Clean record until Ivy showed up. Now he's under investigation and his career's ruined. Marcus pulled out another folder. Same pattern with her last school's vice principal, a youth pastor in Scottsdale, even a female teacher who tried to mentor her. Caroline stared at the evidence, finally understanding the scope of what she was facing. Ivy wasn't just a troubled teenager, she was a sophisticated criminal who'd learned to destroy anyone who threatened her carefully constructed world. The revelation changed everything. Caroline spent the next week consuming the evidence Marcus had gathered, studying Ivy's methods with the clinical detachment of a forensic investigator. Every manipulation, every calculated tear, every perfectly timed sob story, it all made sense now. Ivy wasn't acting out from trauma or abandonment issues. She was a predator who'd learned early that playing the victim was the perfect camouflage for criminal behavior. Caroline called in sick to work and dedicated herself to understanding her enemy. She researched sociopathic behavior, studied case files of similar crimes, even consulted with a forensic psychologist who specialized in juvenile offenders. The family dynamic often enables this behavior without realizing it, Dr. Sandra Martinez explained during their phone consultation. The parents, desperate to protect their child's reputation, become inadvertent accomplices in covering up increasingly serious crimes. "So what do I do?" Caroline asked. "You stop protecting her," Dr. Martinez said simply. "You stop caring more about her welfare than she does. And you accept that saving her might mean destroying her first." That night, Caroline watched Ivy get ready for another study session with her college friends. Her daughter was stunning in a black dress that cost more than Caroline's car payment, her makeup applied with professional precision. "Don't wait up," Ivy called cheerfully, not bothering to look at Caroline as she grabbed her keys. Caroline waited exactly 30 minutes after Ivy left, then made a call. "Detective Morrison? This is Caroline Fletcher. I need to report some criminal activity involving my daughter." The Phoenix Police Department's Special Victims Unit had been tracking the escort ring for months without being able to identify the key players. Caroline's evidence gave them everything they needed to build cases against not just Ivy, but the entire network of men who'd been paying for sex with what they believed was a teenage girl. "This is going to be a major operation," Detective Sarah Morrison warned Caroline during their meeting. "Your daughter will be arrested, charged as an adult, and likely face significant prison time. Are you prepared for that?" Caroline thought of all the adults Ivy had destroyed, all the lives she'd ruined with false accusations and manipulation campaigns. "She made her choices," Caroline said quietly. "Now she gets to live with the consequences." The arrest happened on a Thursday night at the Phoenician Resort, where Ivy was meeting a client who was actually an undercover detective. Caroline watched from the police station as officers brought her daughter in, hands cuffed behind her back, her perfect makeup smeared with tears of genuine shock. "Mom!" Ivy screamed when she saw Caroline waiting in the detective's office. "Mom, please, this is all a misunderstanding. You have to help me." For the first time in months, Ivy's tears were real. Raw. Desperate. Caroline stood slowly, studying her daughter's face. Gone was the calculating predator, replaced by a terrified 17-year-old who finally understood that her mother wasn't going to save her. "You told me I was a monster," Caroline said quietly. "You were right. I am a monster. But I'm your monster, and I'm the one who's going to teach you what real consequences look like." Ivy's face crumpled. "Please, Mom. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I was angry about Dad leaving, and I took it out on you, but I never meant for it to go this far." "Stop," Caroline cut her off. "I've heard your lies before. I've watched you destroy innocent people with those same tears, that same performance. You chose to become a predator, Ivy. You chose to hurt people for profit. You chose to threaten and manipulate your own mother." Detective Morrison stepped forward with a thick folder. Caroline provided evidence of crimes going back 8 months. Prostitution, fraud, blackmail, filing false police reports. Your daughter's looking at 15 to 20 years if convicted on all charges. Ivy turned to Caroline with desperate eyes. "I'll change. I'll go to therapy, I'll get help, I'll do whatever you want. Just don't let them do this to me." Caroline felt a flicker of the old maternal instinct, the urge to protect her child regardless of what she'd done. But then she remembered the guidance counselor whose career Ivy had destroyed, the teacher who'd attempted suicide after Ivy's accusations, the dozens of men whose lives were now ruined because they'd been manipulated into believing they were meeting a legal adult. "I made you a monster by protecting you from consequences your entire life," Caroline said. "I won't make that mistake again." But as Caroline turned to leave, Ivy played her final card, the one thing Caroline never saw coming. "I know about Dad." Ivy screamed. "I know why he really left. I know about the money you stole from his business accounts." Caroline froze. Detective Morrison looked between them with sudden interest. "That's right, Mom," Ivy continued, her voice gaining strength. "You think I'm the only criminal in this family? Dad didn't leave because you were boring, he left because you embezzled $40,000 from his construction company. I have the bank records. I have everything." The accusation hit Caroline like a physical blow, not because it was true, but because it was so perfectly crafted to cast doubt on everything else. Even now, facing prison time, Ivy was still fighting, still manipulating, still trying to drag everyone down to her level. Caroline turned back to face her daughter, and for the first time, she smiled. "Go ahead," Caroline said calmly. "Show them the evidence." Ivy's final gambit backfired spectacularly. The bank records she claimed to have were crude forgeries she'd created months earlier as insurance, never imagining she'd be desperate enough to use them. When forensic accountants examined Caroline's actual financial records, they found nothing but the meticulous budgeting of a single mother stretching every dollar. The forgeries, however, were evidence of another crime, one that added fraud and attempted extortion to Ivy's already extensive list of charges. Caroline sat in the courthouse 6 months later, watching her daughter accept a plea deal that would send her to prison for 7 years. Ivy looked smaller in her orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back severely, her face bare of the makeup that had once made her look so much older. As the judge read the sentence, Ivy turned to look at Caroline one last time. There was no manipulation in her eyes now, no calculated performance. Just the hollow stare of someone who'd finally run out of lies. Caroline felt no satisfaction in the moment, no triumph. Only the cold weight of necessity and the bitter knowledge that she'd had to destroy her own daughter to protect everyone else. After the hearing, Detective Morrison approached Caroline in the courthouse hallway. "The other arrests are proceeding well," she said. 17 men charged so far, including 2 city council members and a federal judge. Your daughter's testimony is helping us dismantle the entire network. Caroline nodded absently. She'd heard the statistics before: dozens of lives saved, potential victims protected, justice served. But statistics didn't ease the ache in her chest or fill the silence in her empty house. "There's something else," Detective Morrison continued. "We found evidence that your daughter was planning something bigger. She'd been documenting compromising information about every client, building files for a large-scale blackmail operation. If you hadn't stopped her when you did." Caroline closed her eyes, imagining the destruction Ivy could have caused with unlimited time and resources. She would have kept escalating. "People like her always do," Detective Morrison agreed. "You saved a lot of lives, Caroline. I hope you remember that." Caroline drove home to her quiet house in suburban Phoenix, the same house where Ivy had once laughed and played and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. She sat in the kitchen where it had all started, where her daughter had spat in her face and declared war. On the counter was a letter from Ivy's prison, the first communication they'd had since the trial. Caroline had been expecting threats, curses, final attempts at manipulation. Instead, she found something she hadn't anticipated. "Mom, I've been in therapy here, and they're making me look at things I never wanted to see. I know you'll never forgive me for what I did, and I don't expect you to. But I need you to know that somewhere along the way, I forgot you were my mother and started seeing you as just another person to control. The therapist says I've been sick for a long time, maybe since Dad left, maybe longer. She says you probably saved my life by stopping me when you did, even though it doesn't feel like it from where I'm sitting. I don't know if I can ever be the daughter you deserved, but I want to try to become someone who doesn't destroy everything she touches. It might take years. It might take forever. I'm sorry for making you into a monster. You were just a mother trying to protect everyone from the monster you raised. Ivy." Caroline read the letter 3 times, searching for hidden manipulation, for the subtle lies that had once been Ivy's signature. But the handwriting was different, shakier, more vulnerable. The words felt raw in a way Ivy's calculated performances never had. Caroline folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. She wouldn't respond, not yet. Maybe not ever. Some wounds cut too deep for forgiveness, some trust broke too completely for repair. But for the first time in months, Caroline allowed herself to grieve, not for the daughter she'd lost, but for the daughter she'd never really had. The one who'd been consumed by her own darkness before Caroline even realized the light was fading. Outside, Phoenix stretched endlessly under the desert sun, full of other families fighting their own quiet wars. Caroline made herself coffee and sat by the window, older and harder than she'd been a year ago, but finally, devastatingly free. The monster was gone. Both of them were. And in the silence that remained, Caroline began to rebuild her life from the ashes of the war her daughter had forced her to win. What did you think of Caroline's ultimate revenge? Was she right to sacrifice her daughter to protect everyone else, or did she go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, And don't forget to subscribe to Formidable Revenge channel for more stories of justice served cold. Until next time, remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go.